하이테크 산업의 요람인 실리콘밸리의 개척자들과 스탠포드 대학의 경영대학원생들이 모였습니다. 제프 그린필드와 만나보시죠. GC의 앞날을 말해줄 썬마이크로 시스템스 회사의 스코트 맥닐리 회장입니다.
This has 1,000,000 lines of code on it. I'm going to boot it for you. Watch.
넷스케이프의 개발자이자 라우드 클라우드사의 회장 마크 앤드리슨입니다.
Work and having been through it gives you respect for trying to keep expectations as low as possible.
실리콘밸리를 혁명시킨 두 분을 만나보시죠.
Exclusive national funding for this program is provided by A.T. Kearney, a global management consulting firm helping businesses achieve results with capabilities in strategy, operations, and technology. A.T. Kearney, right there with you.
Jeff Greenfield, and welcome to CEO Exchange. We've changed our usual opening today to make a point. On campuses like this one, Stanford University, the high-tech revolution was born. The innovations and the people who created them changed the way we work, the way we learn, even the way we live. Now, many of these pioneers are working on their second acts, which may produce a whole new revolution. Today, we're going to meet two of them, Scott McNealy of Sun Microsystems and Marc Andreessen of LoudCloud, formerly of Netscape. We'll meet Marc Andreessen later, but first, Scott McNealy. For the chairman and CEO of Sun Microsystems, this campus holds special meaning. He's a graduate of its Graduate School of Business, even though it took him 3 tries to get admitted. Indeed, his company takes its name from this place. Sun, S-U-N, stands for Stanford University Network. Today, Sun Microsystems is the only major computer company that makes its own chips, uses its own operating system, and has created a language, Java, that really opens up a whole new world of possibility by running on just about any operating system. Today, McNealy's goal is nothing less than a whole new computer world, where networks replace the personal computer, and where a certain competitor named Gates becomes yesterday's news.
선 마이크로 시스템스의 스코트 맥닐리 회장은 아이스하키를 할 때도 회사를 운영하듯 언제나 승리를 꿈꾸죠.
It makes no sense because I play hockey pretty badly. I'm pretty slow. I'm pretty old, and I get knocked down a lot in hockey. I'd rather play hockey like I do business. You never heard yourself playing hockey, did you?
하지만 맥닐리 회장은 사업에선 확실한 승리자입니다. 컴퓨터계 최강자 선 마이크로 시스템스는 직원 수가 4만 명이 넘고 연간 매출이 200억 불에 달하죠.
Hey, what's for lunch today?
선의 주요 산업은 네트워크 컴퓨팅으로 복잡한 운영 체계가 아닌 중앙 서버를 통해 쉽게 소통할 수 있는 네트워크 체계를 만드는 겁니다.
We don't do PCs. They're dangerous. They're viruses. They're expensive and hard to manage.
이곳 직원들은 개인 컴퓨터 대신 썬네일을 사용하고 있고 공립학교에 썬네일을 설치할 프로그램을 만들었습니다.
McNealy's vision was more right than wrong. I mean, the PC is certainly still here. It's certainly going to be a part of our lives for a long time. But the fact of the matter is, a lot of the action is moving to server-based computing.
맥닐리 회장은 미시건주의 아메리칸 모터스 부회장이었던 선친에게서 일을 배웠습니다.
My first job was a foreman in a UAW shop, and we put stuff together and shipped it.
하버드 대학에서 경제학을 전공한 후 맥닐리는 일리노이주에 있는 노크웨일 플래스틱스에 들어갑니다.
I didn't get a lot of job offers coming out of school, and they offered me a job there.
맥닐리는 스탠포드 경영대학원을 나왔습니다. 3년 후 동문들이 그를 선의 직원으로 채용했죠. 2년 후 맥닐리는 29살의 나이로 선의 CEO가 됐습니다. 선은 처음에는 기술자들을 위한 복잡한 네트워크 컴퓨터를 만들었습니다. 그러나 인터넷 혁명으로 바뀌게 됐죠.
We like being the dot and .com. We're helping people .com their business big time.
오늘날 선은 웹사이트와 기업 데이터베이스를 운영하는 서버를 만들어내고 있습니다. 썬네이 같은 네트워크 장치는 선의 서버를 운영하는 초소형 프로세서며 자바는 어떤 운영체계에서도 사용이 가능한 혁신적인 프로그래밍 언어입니다. 그리고 이런 다양한 선의 제품들이 선의 경쟁력을 높이고 있습니다.
Ladies and gentlemen, the chairman and CEO of Sun Microsystems, Scott McNeely. Welcome. Have a seat. All right. This is impressive. Your dad was an executive with the American Motors Company. Is there anything that you looked at or remembered as a kid fascinated by automobiles that applies in this new millennium?
Well, actually, there was a lot. You know, when we got into the computer business 19 years ago, there were hundreds and hundreds of desktop and server operating systems. Now we're down to a much more manageable few. It was very interesting. The Ford dealer couldn't lock somebody into Fords. You know, you didn't build your garage around the shape of your Ford. You didn't pick your job by whether or not the Ford automobile would work on the roads that would get to your office. You certainly didn't have the company move the brake pedal every year on your automobile so that you'd have to upgrade. There were a lot of similarities between what's happening in the computer industry now and the automobile industry then.
One of the things that strikes me when I learned your dad worked for American Motors, they were the fourth company among the big three. But the point is, it didn't make it. American Motors didn't make it, and I'm wondering if there was something about their inability to get enough of the market to survive that has some applicability in the world you dwell in.
No question, scale matters. And when we started Sun, we were going to go big in a hurry. We figured if we were going to do a belly flop, the phrase was we were going to empty the pool out. And that just meant we were going to go huge, and decided early on to go for scale. You know, there just aren't any small automobile companies, and we didn't think there were going to be any small computer companies.
But did there come a point when, as you helped build or led Sun Microsystems into what it had become, you looked up and said, you know, I'm working a lot harder than my old man ever did?
Yeah, every day. And it bugs the heck out of me, but you know what? What else can I do? My golf game isn't that good. I'm over 40 now, I'll never make the NHL, so it's a good thing for me to go do.
But it does, well, actually, we could leap ahead. It does strike me that, and call me madcap, that you probably could live out the rest of your days in relative comfort if you stopped working tomorrow. Just a hunch.
Yeah, that's true.
Many of the people I've interviewed here said, but it's not an office. This isn't a job. This is something way more than a job, even a good job. Is this way more than a job for you, what you're up to?
It's work. And they don't call it work for nothing. And it's you know, it isn't as fun as it was when I was an entrepreneur. It's way more satisfying. But there's a great saying, I don't know who invented it, but only the most secure can do nothing. You think about it, most of the folks, you know, here in the audience and, you know, the people who are watching this are very insecure people, and they've got to prove something to somebody every day, or they'd go hang out on a beach. The good news is I think I'm able to usually channel my insecurity in a positive way as opposed to a negative way, and I think that's what makes a great leader versus a disaster.
Well, you know, since I'm not up for a job at Sun Microsystems, there's no need to pander, but I think a lot of people right now are thinking, if Scott McNeely isn't secure, who the hell is, other than the Dalai Lama, who believe, you know, who's like divine? As my grandmother would have said, maybe. So what's not to be secure about?
I don't know. You're just born there. You're wired that way. I like to go to bed at night, every night, thinking I went as hard as I could for as long as I could across as many areas of my life that I deem important, and it's family, friends, and my work. I love it all, and it's all very important to me. And you know, it's too much chocolate cake. Everything is just too much chocolate cake. But I haven't been bored since I left school.
Okay.
And
you know, you're making this almost easy, because I did want to return back to your days here, because many of the folks who sat in this chair, and they are some pretty impressive people, not only didn't have an MBA, a lot of them didn't have a BA or a BS, never went to college, and some of them, it reminds me of the line from The Freshman, that great movie where Marlon Brando comes into Matthew Broderick's dorm room and he looks around and he says, so this is college, I didn't miss nothing. Did you learn stuff at the Graduate School of Business?
you know, it's really hard to have an education in business. Because when I was in business school, I didn't buy anything, I didn't raise any money, I didn't sell anything, I didn't hire anybody, I didn't fire anybody, I didn't review anybody, I didn't give any speeches. seems to me that's about most of what I do. It's like learning golf by, reading some books, watching some videos, and hanging out at the driving range and watching people hit balls for a couple of years, and then going to the first tee with the TV lights on, and you kind of scull one into the crowd and take somebody out. That's probably what most of you will do the first couple of years till you get your sea legs back.
Okay, I do have to tell you, I think the odds on this honorary degree may have dropped precipitously in the last minute, but let's as they say in Washington, let's move on. But it almost seems that you were thinking about something like the Internet or the web before there really was one. I can't believe that that's exactly right, but in some sense, weren't you a company waiting for the web to come along?
Well, in fact, that is true, and it wasn't me. It was clearly, Bill Joy and Andy Bechtelsheim and Vinod Khosla, the other three founders, who were really the true visionaries for network computing, the workstation concept, file servers. The first 2 months on the job, I'm up on the board drawing boxes called file servers connected to workstations, and I didn't have any idea what a file server was. Files? I'm thinking a file cabinet. We're going to sell file cabinets? I didn't know what I was a manufacturing guy. I was bolting them together in the back. And really, I've had to learn the business and learn the technology. I wasn't the visionary, but Bill Joy really wrote the IP stack for Unix that became the IP stack that really started the whole Internet
protocol.
We sent emails to each other in our office from day one, February 1982. And when everybody discovered, IP mail in the mid-90s, we're like, duh, where have you been for the last decade?
Let me turn now to what I guess is one of the, in your world, enduring. I'm talking about the last 5 or 6 years, I guess, and that is this whole question of the personal computer versus the network computer. One of your colleagues, a gentleman named Larry Ellison, said 5 years ago that 10 years out, it would be over for the PC. We're halfway there. Was he right?
Well, I think, people love their PC because it's a huge activity generator. It's a Rubik's Cube. It's a miracle when you get it to work. And, so it's a lot of fun, and people like to, I like to play golf. I like to spend time with my kids. I like to do other things. There are some people who love to mess with it. And what you have is a device. I hold a device here. This has 1 million lines of code on it. I'm going to boot it for you. Watch. I'm going to do this slowly on TV. Right? There. It's now working. I just booted 1 million lines of code. And it works every time. I had no fear when I did this little demo that this would work. And you know what? There are other devices like a smart card. Here's a card. This is more powerful than an Apple II computer, and it runs Java applets. You know what? There's not even an on-off switch. You don't get a manual with a smart card. You just stick it in, and now they're proximity-based, so you get near something, and it will work. And that's how technology ought to be. You shouldn't have to deal with it. And so devices are all going to have fundamentally Internet connectedness. Everything's going to be connected to the Internet. And hopefully you won't have to connect to the Internet. That's when we'll have solved the problem.
When I get near my computer and turn it on, that's when I become deeply religious.
Yeah.
Please, God. Yeah. Okay. 137 million of these suckers are sitting on desks and in homes all over the world. More than 50% of American households have them. The DVD may be better than the VCR, but with 80 million people having a VCR in a library, it's going to be a long time before people get rid of the VCRs. Isn't that the same thing about the PC?
Oh, yeah. People are still riding horses.
No. Not to work. No. My point is, that's a hobby. Millions and millions of people now use the PC. They have an investment in it. Their stuff is stored there. All I'm asking is, isn't it going to take a fairly long time
it took a long time for people to get to banks. If you go back in the old days, people stored money in their mattresses for a long time. And all of a sudden they found out that people would rob their houses or their house would burn down. And they've slowly put it to the service provider, the financial service provider. If you have a really important document, the last place you ought to have it is in your house. It's not safe there. It's like putting your money in your wallet or in your mattress. It's like your medical records. You don't keep your medical records at home. You keep it with your health care service provider. You want your medical records out there where the appropriate people can get at it if they need to. if somebody's in an ambulance going to visit you as you're lying by the side of the road, it would be nice if they could electronically. And by the way, the networks are getting very fast. NTT Docomo will be shipping full motion video capability to the cell phone this year. So if you want to talk about a high-speed network, it's wireless.
So basically, part of what you're saying, I take it, is not just in terms of network computers, the way I might think of them, a relatively inexpensive terminal on my desk, but network computers that don't look like computers, that look like a phone, that look like a card.
The right answers are things like the little BlackBerry email device. So you can send and receive emails at any time, any place, wherever you are, and have a nice little dedicated device like that. Or to have your automobile, when you hit an eighth of a tank of gas, run an auction with all of the gas stations within range and say, I've got an empty tank of gas. Who wants to bid? I'm going to the driver in 10 seconds with the best bid. So, get it together. Now, you didn't have to log in. You didn't have to boot Windows NT. You didn't have to hit Control-Alt-Delete. Your car just does it, and it shows up on the dashboard and says, you need gas. Cheap is to the right. Quick is straight ahead. And that's the answer.
I will just put on the table, before I turn to our first professor's question, the notion that anyone who wants that in his car may have too much time on his hands. But that's my opinion.
You will have too much time because you won't have to worry about it.
All right. The first question comes from William Barnett, who is an associate professor of strategic management and organizational behavior.
Scott, when you were new in the industry, you were seen as an upstart, not taken seriously by the established firms that you would ultimately defeat. Now, as an established firm, looking forward, if you were to lose in your industry, what would the upstart look like that would beat you at your own game?
I believe what's going to happen is convergence. And you're going to see the video equipment manufacturers, the telephone equipment manufacturers, the network equipment manufacturers, the computer equipment manufacturers all converging. I believe that, we could end up being so focused on IBM that we could get broadsided by another company in one of those other businesses who's really done a better job of integrating convergence.
The last 6 or 7 years, convergence has been one of these buzzwords that shows up at every industry meeting. Have you got a sense in your own mind about when this actually might happen? Roughly?
No.
Okay.
I mean,
the answer, some people say, is 5 years from whenever we're talking about it.
The real question is, when does it happen to you? And that's what everybody's asking. When will it happen for me? And people say, when's the PC going to be dead? And my answer is, it's already happened for me. I go into my office, and I take a smart card that has my picture on it, and I stick it into this very thin device that has no disk, no CD, no floppy, no fan, no whatever. And I stick this smart card in, and it goes and finds my desktop, which has been fully rendered on a server, and downloads it within a couple of seconds. Our employees don't get desks and offices anymore.
But could we stipulate that you might not be the typical PC user?
No, not the typical PC user.
Or not
I'm
the
not
typical
a
computer user?
Well, we're starting to roll this thing out in very large volumes. Thin clients are everywhere. Java's showing up. Java browsers are showing up in these devices, set-top boxes, game machines, automobiles, you name it. It is happening, and it will win.
So whatever has happened in the last several months in the dot-com world, the crashes and burns, the shakeout, whatever we're calling it, this is a diversion from what you see as coming.
I got a really stupid businessmodel.com going under is not an indicator of anything. I mean, you can't have a business model that loses money and say, I'll make it up in volume. It just doesn't work.
So in the same sense that it was ludicrous to think that anything named .com was necessarily going to be a gold mine, we may be overhyping the notion this is the end of the Internet, the web is dead. This is just ridiculous.
I talk to huge companies all day long, and I ask them, what percentage of your structured and unstructured business is on a website available to anybody, any place, any device, anytime? And they go somewhere between 0 and 20% of our business is web ready. That's how far along big, huge, developed country organizations are in moving to the web. We're so far from moving to the web. It's not the second half. It's like the first or second minute of a 60-minute game here.
I want to ask you about the fellows up in Redmond, but I want to ask a more direct question. You told the story often about your first speech as CEO and how you learned that a certain amount of showmanship helped a lot. How much of that is your job, being a showman?
I don't think... I don't know. I can't believe anybody buys our computers because I cracked a great top 10 list or something. that's a pretty weak reason to go buy a Sun computer. But I believe it's more motivating to the employees. You know, they want to work for a place where, you know, it isn't all frown and grump. It's kick butt and have fun. And
but
I order my employees, you will have fun.
Well, that's a good way to do it.
Yeah.
Fun
the floggings will continue until you're having fun, right?
Fun by fear. But let me push you a little on this, because when you go on one of the financial shows on CNBC or CNN or wherever, when you're appearing before a Wall Street or a group of analysts, you've got to know that if you give them a good show, if you project enthusiasm and energy and optimism, that is going to be one way that they're going to judge your company, no?
Maybe, but you know, I spend so many hours doing what I do that if I didn't have fun, poke fun at myself, at my company, at the competition, I get the biggest giggle out of, you know, when I poke fun at the competition, they get all bent out of shape. Like, get over it. I mean, get a life. Don't take everything so seriously.
Would there be any particular part of this competition you might be thinking of?
Maybe the printer company and the monopolist.
The monopolist. But let me pause before we turn north and turn back to another member of the faculty, because I want to get her question in also. This is from Margaret Neal, who is the McCoy Bank One Professor of Organization.
You're a superstar CEO with strong personal style here in the Silicon Valley. Is there room in your organization for strong opinions other than yours? How do you get people to disagree with you, to share their unique perspectives on the problems or tasks at hand?
I have a problem getting them to agree with me, and that's really up to any particular leader to decide whether they want to surround themselves with people who are smarter and better. And I know a lot of people say that. If there is one thing, you know, given a very serious answer to having gone to Harvard undergrad and Stanford Business School, is I truly felt like I was surrounded by a group of people that were just absolutely a cut above any other group I've ever spent time with. And I enjoy that, and I love getting the aha when I hear somebody really smart, you know, cut through all of the noise and come up with the right answer or a big breakthrough or whatever. And it's fun.
One of the things that is striking, I think, about the world that you are a part of, well, it's a couple of things. One is the sheer amount of wealth creation, even after the correction. And the other is the capacity that companies like yours, individuals like you, and a whole bunch of others have shown in looking around corners. And it occurred to me, what would happen if someone like yourself said, you know, I have enough now. You know, I can live a comfortable life. You got a lot of productive years left. Do you sometimes ever think that you want a different kind of challenge in a real realm like that?
Well, you know, maybe buried in your question, you've kind of put some words in my mouth. Maybe I'll put some words in your mouth and say that what you're asking me is, why don't you stop working for money and start working for the better good? And I sit back, and I think that's a legitimate question to ask of anybody. And, you know, certainly the market economy in the United States of America has been very good to me. I got no complaints. But then I think, what is Sun doing, and what am I doing as CEO of Sun, and what is the value add of that? We're doing $2 billion plus of R&D annually in a very effective way that's helping with distance learning, home shopping, telemedicine, home banking, worldwide communication, that can help address the digital divide. And the digital divide is the developed network nations versus the underdeveloped non-networked nations. And let me tell you, I've traveled around the world, and, you know, I love people when they talk about the poor in America. And I think, you don't know what poor is. Get on an airplane, get a passport, and go see. I think about the 43,500 jobs that we've created at Sun, plus the other jobs that we've created through our partners. I think about the income taxes, the corporate taxes. And so if I were to leave Sun, I would go off and try and do some other wonderful thing that I don't know much about. And
see, I think you've actually, some of the words you put in my mouth weren't the words I was asking. I don't think there's a gap between making a company that is hugely profitable and spinning off all these other things. In fact, I think one of the reasons people treat CEOs like you as superstars where they might not have 100 years ago is you're making millionaires out of people, and you don't have a company store, and people aren't working 12 hours a day for starvation wages. Yeah. But the question is different. It's whether or not there is a way to take the enormous energy and capacity to build something and turn it into an arena that is sorely lacking in sane?
I think there are, but I think, a lot of that has to do with whether, President Bush has a very good focus on education. And the real issue in education is, do we do that through Teddy Forsman's voucher initiatives or whatever, or do we find a way to just put other levels of accountability into our school systems? And, that's a big and tough problem. And I don't really have enough bits on the bus left to go after that.
So it sounds like you're worried about the Peter principle. You might not want to rise to a level of incompetence if they put you in a different area. That famous...
Well, that and, I think we're doing great things. And I think people really underestimate what the capitalist private organizations do to keep people off the street, keep them working, keep them educated, keep them off of welfare, keep them paying taxes, and kind of tiring them out so that they don't want to cause other problems. So, I think we get very little credit for that. That's fine. I don't need credit. But I think, when I look at what I can do, you ask me why I keep working. There's a lot of psychic income, and it's a very satisfying thing to know that we're doing things that, are very effective and have a huge payoff.
We have one more question from the faculty. This is from George Foster, who's the Wattis Professor of Management.
Compared to the early days, how have you changed the way at which you interact with companies that other people are saying are going to eat your lunch?
Have you found common cause now with people who you once regarded as your adversaries?
Oh, there's always, here in California now, we're trying to get power. So, actually, I was on the phone with Craig Barrett from Intel talking to Governor Gray Davis about this topic, and we're very highly aligned on this particular topic. So.
But I cannot let this go by without returning to one of your favorite subjects, which is the gentleman and the company from Redmond. So let's just put this on the table since we have a table. How much of this, to what extent are you having fun with this guy? To what extent are you kind of jerking his chain, if I can put it that way? And to what extent is this... Woo. Yeah. Come on. To what extent when you have these interesting labels or these analysis of Microsoft, is there
like monopolist? That's a label?
No.
I think the DOJ kind of formally tattooed that one on his forehead. I didn't.
But you, is there any sense in which you kind of are taking a little bit of pleasure out of fighting what you would consider the good fight? Come on.
No. Is my nose growing?
Yeah.
No, it's not a personal thing. And it is kind of, I play hockey, and what you do in hockey is you kind of rib a guy, get him off their game, and they hit you over the head, and you get a 2-minute penalty, and they go to the penalty box, and you get a power play, and you score a goal, and you win the game. Right? That works. And it works on some people, it doesn't work on others. It works in the Pacific Northwest, so I keep doing it. And they keep hitting me over the head, and I'll keep doing it as long as they go nuts. On the other hand, I'm not the Lone Ranger in understanding and knowing and watching the business tactics and, strong-arm monopolistic tactics that are clearly against the law. And I think we have the most competitive economy on the planet because we have well-written and, I believe, quite well enforced and quite well interpreted antitrust laws. They broke the rules. And, they don't seem very remorseful so far, and they're going to try and, drag this thing out into as many administrations as possible. But the answer is, you're not supposed to do that, and there should be consequences.
Be that as it may, when you look back over the last 10 or 15 years, was Microsoft an asset to the high-tech revolution or a hindrance, or both?
Oh, that's not a fair question to ask me. And have fun. When the anthropologists and archaeologists, get their picks and their shovels and their brooms and dusters, and they dust off the 80s and 90s, and they see that, there's just a plateauing in productivity. They're going to dust it off, and they're going to hold up the answer to why things slowed down and why things didn't accelerate. And it's Microsoft Office. There is no single piece of technology ever launched that used up more person centuries for less gain than that one particular technology. And there's nothing that buries a network faster, that drives people crazier than Microsoft Office. Yet we love to make things look pretty. Rather than being productive, we all become artists. And that's my view. That's a personal view. That's not a professional view.
See, I was under the impression that the end of the 90s had seen an astonishing growth in productivity.
That was the Internet. And the Internet finally took off. And I think it got delayed. Like I said, we were doing TCP, IP, email, and NFS in the early 80s. And unfortunately, people couldn't get at it because Microsoft was pushing LAN Manager, Microsoft Office, and this other favorite one called Outlook. I get that wrong every time.
So I can't leave this with one last question.
You had enough.
No. Hey.
Keep going. I got more.
I'm sure you do. I'm going to ask you to, this is a free association thing, for the last shot at this, and then we're going to turn to the folks out here. The best thing about Bill Gates is...
his foundation.
Okay. Good. And that's
was that the right answer?
I don't know.
No, neither do
I just asked
looking
the question.
for the score, that's all.
So, in a minute, we're going to take some questions from our audience of future MBAs, but first, this look at the Stanford Graduate School of Business. Future President
1925년 허버트 후보 대통령이 세운 스탠퍼드 경영대학원은 서부 지역의 최초의 경영대학원이죠. 실리콘밸리의 중심에 위치한 스탠퍼드 경영대학원의 자랑은 미국의 최대 기업 도서관입니다. 2명의 노벨상 수상자를 배출한 이곳에서는 125명의 교수진과 730명의 학생들이 있죠.
Okay, tell us your name, ask your question, and then take a seat so the next question will come down. Go ahead, sir.
Hi, my name is Philip Dingra, and from the beginning, Sun has had a reputation for radical innovation. Are there things unique to your corporate culture that foster creativity and openness to ideas, not just from the upper management, but from regular employees?
Yeah, I think that's something we've tried to feature in every kind of employee communication that we have. And we have a statement at Sun: we want you to break the rules of the industry, not break the rules of the law and the land. Look to do something that really sets somebody on their ear. So we feature that, we seek it out, and we spend some time in our meetings and say, all right, what can we do that will really mess with the competition? Like Star Office is a Microsoft Office compatible suite. We said, let's make it free. So we did. We got 4 million downloads. That's kind of changing the rules of the industry.
Sir.
Hi, I'm Gabriel Manjarres, and my question was related to the comments you were making about the digital divide and networking. Is there a possibility, given the very low percentage of actual wired high bandwidth homes in this country, for wireless bandwidth to actually leapfrog and make most telecarriers' current business models obsolete?
I think there's the opportunity for that, and all you have to do is go see the Java iMode phone being launched this winter. And I was with the CEO of Sprint, Bill Esri, and he had an interesting cell phone where he was downloading MP3 files out over this little wireless network to his cell phone, and then he put on stereo headphones, and he had a little Napster Man, Walkman, Discman cell phone all wrapped up into one, listening to digital music on the cell phone. So those kinds of things are going to happen wireless in ways that you're going to be watching, instead of watching me here in the audience, you're going to be down here watching the San Jose Sharks playing on your cell phone. And, I won't know what you're doing down there, but that's what's going to happen, and wireless technology is coming faster than you think.
It's a dream come true. And thank you for joining us so much. Less than a decade ago, 2,000 miles east of here at the University of Illinois, an undergraduate was working on a piece of software to link computers to distant information. A couple of years later, Marc Andreessen helped bring Netscape into the world, and the world was never the same. So what do you do after you become a rich and famous 25-year-old? What comes next? And do the skills that brought you so far so fast translate into an ability to shape a new lasting business when you are no longer the only game in town? That's what one of the cyber world's first superstars is about to find out.
대부분의 사업가들이 기업 하나를 세우기도 힘들어하는데 마크 앤드리슨은 30살 때 이미 2개의 기업을 시작했죠. 그가 최근에 세운 회사는 라우드 클라우드입니다.
LoudCloud was created because we see a huge opportunity in the market to really help many businesses fundamentally harness the technology underneath the internet for their businesses.
라우드 클라우드는 웹 호스팅 서비스 회사입니다. 페니메이, 나이키 같은 유명한 회사들이 라우드 클라우드의 고객들로 라우드 클라우드 덕분에 신속하게 인터넷 사업을 확장시키고 있습니다.
LoudCloud provides the outsourced software infrastructure for e-businesses, the same kinds of underlying technology that you'll find at the world's best e-businesses like Dell and Schwab and eBay and Amazon.
지금도 실리콘밸리의 기린아로 불리는 앤드리슨은 23살 때 넷스케이프를 공동 설립함으로써 인터넷 브라우저라는 거대한 시장에 손을 대기 시작했습니다. 내비게이터는 앤드리슨이 일리노이 대학의 컴퓨터 공학도 시절 만들었던 것을 개량한 것입니다.
Marc Andreessen and I spent 3 months deciding what we wanted to do. We just simply wanted to start a company. One evening he said, well, let's just create a mosaic killer. I said, great, that sounds fine to me. If we can hire all of the guys that helped you write Mosaic, we'll do it.
인터넷 신동들과 함께 만들어낸 넷스케이프는 1995년 성공적으로 주식시장에 상장되었고 그 열기는 1999년까지 계속됐습니다.
What Netscape did was a starting gun. It triggered a new approach of companies to raising money. And it said more or less that anybody who has a bright idea and is persuasive enough can go out and get the money to execute the idea. So it leveled the playing field.
그러나 마이크로소프트사를 비롯한 경쟁업체들에 밀려서 넷스케이프는 1998년 AOL에 팔리게 됩니다. 앤드리슨은 AOL의 기술이사로 들어갔고 이미 억만장자가 된 그는 1999년 라우드 클라우드를 새롭게 만들어냈습니다.
Several of our customers are very, very well-known household names. We have other customers that you haven't yet heard of, but will be hearing of in the months and years ahead, who we think are going to be very, very successful.
현재 라우드 클라우드는 주식 공모를 할 알맞은 때를 기다리고 있죠. 과연 앤드리슨 회장이 라우드 클라우드로 두 번째 성공을 거둘지 궁금하군요.
Ladies and gentlemen, the chairman of LoudCloud, Marc Andreessen. How you doing? Have a seat. I was thinking when I knew you were going to be on the show that in some ways what you did was the equivalent of winning the Nobel Prize when you were 23 years old. Well, let me just explain. Let me explain. If somebody wins the Nobel Prize when you're 23 years old, the question is, so now what?
And I think you're supposed to become a crank. That's what I've always heard. Anyway.
Well, a lot of Nobel Prize winners actually have. They've had bizarre theories of either vitamins or racial preferences. They have become cranks. But I assume that's not your ambition. But what I'm getting at is this. Your first venture into the business world was something that, by universal acknowledgement, this is not overstating it changed the world. It changed a whole lot of stuff. Wasn't that the slogan, the internet changes everything? Mm-hmm. And now, as chairman of LoudCloud, you're in a business where you are, as you've described it, basically providing the plumbing for companies that want to have a website. You're going to maintain it for them. You're going to make it work for them. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure there are people who've asked you this before and said, well, for heaven's sakes, Mark, I mean, here's Netscape. It's like discovering a new planet. And now you're a nuts and bolts guy. Tell us how you came to decide that that's what someone like yourself at the ripe old age of 29, in your dotage, should be doing.
Well, Netscape was many things, but I will tell you, it was a very nuts and bolts company. And Netscape is something that's very confusing to a lot of people. It's like one of these things. It's like you can look at it from whatever angle you want and read out of it anything you want. One of the things it was, however, was it was a real technology company, and we were selling over $100 million a quarter of software at a time when nobody was even close to that. We were turning a profit doing it, and so on. And a lot of what Netscape was actually doing in terms of the software we were building, the products we were building, was hardcore technology. And so Netscape's one of those companies like Sun or Oracle where there's aspects of it that the public likes to focus on and the press likes to focus on, and then there's this business under the surface that's really not that interesting. And so the challenge that we've taken on ourselves with LoudCloud is to see, can we do over a long period of time what a Sun or an Oracle or an Intel's been able to do and build a company that'll be around for a long, long time, which is not something we were able to do with Netscape.
So now you are a chairman and a businessman. What did you take from the Netscape experience? Are there lessons, or is that just mythological?
No, there's no shortage of lessons. there are all kinds of lessons. And, Netscape was funny because it really compressed what would normally take be a company life cycle over a 10 or 20-year period, sort of compressed it into about 3 years. And when we started Netscape, I didn't have a clue. I had no idea what was going on. But was able to sort of observe it firsthand and see all the things that happened, see the things where we made mistakes, see the things that we did well, and really draw on that. And so with LoudCloud, we're trying to pull all those lessons and then the lessons that, we've been able to learn from every other company out there in the last, 10 years. And really incorporate that into, who knows if we'll succeed or not, but we're sure going to try to build a lasting company.
One of the things I guess that history teaches about business, and I guess it happens to every business, is there were opportunities seized and opportunities missed. I mean, you can take the television industry where any one of the established networks could have bought CNN and put it out of business or absorbed it. We all know that, the story is legendary. If IBM had realized what it had in that paper it did about relational databases, Oracle probably wouldn't have showed up. Or if IBM had dealt differently, there might not have ever been a Microsoft. Looking back, there are people who say Netscape was an enormous success, but maybe it missed an opportunity or two. As you look back, did you?
Well, the businesses that you're talking about, what they all had in common was they all had big, successful, established businesses. And the thing that they stumbled over in every single one of those cases is there was something new that came along that initially looked like it wasn't as good of a product, it didn't have as good a business model, it wasn't going to make as much money, and it probably wouldn't succeed. And you see that happen over and over and over again. One of the interesting things that happens with history is in the case of big successes, the history tends to get written in a way that it looks like success was absolutely linear and everything was done just right all along. And of course, that's never, ever, ever true. Because this stuff is like making sausage. You never actually want to see how the sausage gets made or what the waste byproducts look like. So, the other analogy I'll make is this is a lot like being in the middle of sort of a good old-fashioned war where, you don't have satellites, you don't have surveillance, you don't have, all the sort of fancy stuff you have when you fight wars these days. And you are, in a cloud of dust, and you have a plan, and then, the first 5 minutes of the war, the plan goes straight to hell because, you no longer know where your troops are. And at this kind of accelerated pace that a Netscape goes through, that these companies go through, and frankly, we're seeing it now. The number of sort of high-tech or internet companies currently in the process of missing their quarters or blowing up. This is indicative of how hard it is. And it's not that any of the teams are smarter or dumber than any of the others. This is really, really, really hard work. And it really, I'll tell you, having been through it, gives you a respect for trying to keep expectations as low as possible because that's what really ends up, I think, hurting you bad.
We've seen within a lot of established companies that tried to leap to the internet, leap to the web as a new way of doing business, whether it's the New York Times, whether it's Rupert Murdoch, whether it's AOL, Time Warner, they said, we've got to get into the internet right now, day before yesterday, start up sites, hire a lot of people, we're going to have a website because we have to, because this is the year 2001.
Sure.
And now they're saying, but we haven't figured out yet how to make money. What's the lesson from that?
Well, the lesson is, this is hard stuff. So if you don't do it, if you're the New York Times and you don't have a website, well, what does that mean for your business? Does that mean that you're going to let someone come along and take your legs out from under you? And, one of the nice things that's happened, part of it's because of this book, The Innovator's Dilemma, but everybody sort of now knows the moral of the story of what happened to digital or what happened to IBM or what happened to these companies over the years that just got their legs taken out from under them by a disruptive technology. And the internet, despite everything we've been through, is still a disruptive technology, and it still has the potential to really radically destabilize a lot of these businesses. And some people know how to go after it, and some people are able to make it work, and some people can't. And, it really separates the companies that are going to be around for 30 years from the companies that aren't.
I've seen you quote Napoleon on something which I always attributed to Joe DiMaggio. I don't know who it's an odd mix. But the quote I believe DiMaggio said was, I'd rather be lucky than good. Right. And I think there's a Napoleonic version of that. It may have been him.
Napoleon said, I'd rather have lucky generals than smart generals.
Well, I think DiMaggio hit better than Napoleon,
That's
so I'm sticking with him. Were you, looking back on your years, how true is it?
Oh, well, in my case, it was definitely luck. I think you'd be insane for anybody in a similar circumstance to claim otherwise. But the other side of that, from sort of what Napoleon said is it really goes to the nature and how you build companies, the kinds of people you try to incorporate. And, you'd really much rather have people in these companies who are sort of street fighters.
Speaking of people, I read that one of the things that you have taken from your business experience, it's an inelegant phrase, Mark, but it does ring a bell, and that is that what you worry about is the law of crappy people.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that they teach that at business schools. But what is it?
They should.
Well, okay, tell us about it.
Yep. it goes to the very nature of hiring in a startup. So you start a startup with a group of people who you know very, very well, and you know how good they are, and you know their strengths and weaknesses, and then you try to hire everybody to be as good as they are or better. And so you try to keep the sort of talent level, pretty much the same, or have it trend up a little bit as you hire. But you're hiring under a lot of pressure, and your investors are beating you up to hire, everything, salespeople and marketing people and finance people and more programmers and everything. And so you're under a lot of hiring pressure, and you're starting to hire more and more people. So, all of a sudden you make a mistake, and you hire a manager who's not quite as good, and then you cruise along, and then whoop, you hire a VP who's really not that good. And what happens at that point is a lot of crappy people kicks in, because frankly, people who aren't that good are a little bit like coat hangers in the closet. They tend to replicate. And before you know it, you've got a whole group in your company that consists of people who just aren't that good. And they don't know that. So it's not like they're standing up saying, hey, we're not very good. Would you please fire us all now?
Yes, I could see that not happening.
Yeah, and then another interesting thing happens, which is that then sets the level of what it means to be a manager or a director or a vice president in your company, whatever the different ranks and titles are. Because then what you see in the promotion process is somebody will say, well, my employee here should be a vice president or a manager because your guy over there is a complete moron and he's a vice president. And so then the level of that sort of rank in the organization drops.
Okay. I need one more explication of this.
And it goes straight to hell.
I can understand that part, but I just find it difficult that anybody would have said in any organization, I think this guy should be vice president because that guy's a moron, so I need my moron.
Happens all the time. Now, they don't use the word moron.
Okay.
But what they do say is, boy, my guy is sure better than Bill. I can guarantee you my guy's better than Bill. And it happens really, really fast, and it's because, managers want their people to succeed, and they want people to be promoted. And that's exactly what happens, and the level of the caliber of the people in your organization drops to that.
Okay, when you're talking to people who may well be in the higher ranks of the executive suites in the coming years, what do you do about the law of crappy people?
Mm-hmm. You fight. I mean, you do everything you can to make sure actually the sort of full form of the law of crappy people, the corollary is that it's inevitable. So, it's sort of, like the philosopher said, in the long run we're all dead, the economist. But what you do is you just fight to hold it, and it's like entering turbulence, and you just fight to hold it at that level as fast as you grow. And then the other thing you do is you take corrective action, and that ultimately is the test of the manager in the long run. I think is assuming you're doing everything else right, can you take corrective action? Can you move people who shouldn't be in the company or aren't at the same level of capability? Can you move them out? Can you find them better jobs? Can you train them? Can you educate them? Can you do something to counteract that? And it's extraordinarily hard.
Let me ask you a question that's mildly related. This question comes from George Parker, who is the Dean Witter Distinguished Professor of Finance.
One issue that's of interest to many people is the appropriate role of the university in assisting entrepreneurs. How did the University of Illinois assist you when you hatched the idea of the Internet?
Yeah, well, they tried to shut us down. So I guess it's... I think at this point they might be regretting that, and not least because I won't shut up about it. Stanford does this absolutely right. Stanford in particular takes an incredibly liberal view towards technology spinning out and becoming a company. And in many cases that, includes the people, it includes the faculty members, it includes the technology itself, it includes the R&D and so forth. That's why Silicon Valley exists. I mean, Silicon Valley, you trace it right back to Stanford. That could happen anywhere in the U.S., but it's significant that it really hasn't.
Speaking of culture, we hear a lot about the differing cultures, particularly as the new economy has taken center stage, where the folks come from, how they perform under what circumstances. When you found yourself, I mean, you came up from literally nowhere in the sense that you were an undergraduate 1 year and a couple of years later you were in Netscape. That was it, right, in terms of business experience? Okay, now it's a couple of years later, I'm fast forwarding, and you're at AOL, which has now taken over Netscape. Mm-hmm. Now AOL Time Warner, which
rules the world.
Well,
right? Yeah.
One of many people, although,
But they haven't installed the puppet strings yet, I see.
No.
Yeah.
But my question is, how real for you was this issue of a culture clash? I mean, was there a sense in which, okay, you find yourself in, suburban Virginia, you've been working for Netscape, now you're here. From your perspective, what did it seem like?
Yeah, well, I mean, for one thing, we knew that it was going to be a radically different culture, and that was very, very apparent. And because AOL is so different than the kinds of companies that get created out here in so many ways. And it's not even necessarily better or worse. It's just flat out different. And so my goal at AOL is to go understand what is it that's so different about the AOL culture, and why have they been so successful when everybody said for years that they were going to go straight out of business. And I think I figured that out, and I think I made a contribution when I was there, but in the long run, I think what I'm doing now makes more sense.
There are those who tell you that the future is going to be this amazing experience where we're going to be walking around with these internet devices, right in our pocket. We're going to pull out our little cell phone-like devices and do email and get our news and get our stocks and, I don't know, order dinner and stuff. Is this your sense of the future?
Well, by and large, although of course, if history is any guide, it'll all be there and none of it'll quite work right. But the idea sounds pretty good.
Or will it just never quite work?
Oh yeah, no, this stuff never quite works right. I mean, cars. I love the car metaphor. My car breaks down. So, the promise is all. The reality is always a little less than the promise. I'll tell you the other thing about technology is, it does take people a while to learn how to integrate this into their lives, and it took a while for people to learn how to integrate TVs, and it took a while to learn how to integrate cars. And this is going to be no different.
I want to ask last question from the faculty, and then it's your turn. So you may want to. If you have a question for Mark, you may want to start lining up back there. This question comes from William Barnett, Associate Professor of Strategic Management and Organizational Behavior.
Mark, you've clearly proven yourself to be a pioneer with the founding of Netscape and now LoudCloud. But times have changed, and the selling of a vision is no longer enough. With the recent emphasis on managing for profitability, how is that going to change the way that you manage at LoudCloud into the future?
Well, I'll tell you, when we started LoudCloud, it was right in the middle of the dot-com frenzy, and we had a bunch of different ideas for dot-coms, all of which would have been complete disasters. And then we had this idea for LoudCloud, which had a number of interesting characteristics. Customers would pay us. We would get paid on a monthly basis for doing what we do, as long as we did a good job. And, over some period of months, we would go profitable on a per-customer basis, just like, Walmart goes profitable on a per-store basis. And so we could actually model this out as a real business and actually show how we're going to generate cash. My main sort of thing that I think I'm really lucky about is we didn't start this company a year sooner. Because if we had, all of our customers would be .coms, they'd all be going out of business, and we'd be hosts. So that's the other sort of...
Rather be lucky than good.
Yeah, there's one more example.
Napoleon or Joe DiMaggio or both said.
Yep.
So, tell us your name, speak in a loud, clear voice, and give us a good, sharp, concise question. Go ahead.
My name is Nishan Deshpande, and I was thinking, I guess you have a unique perspective of competing against Microsoft, and we heard Scott's views earlier. So I was wondering what your views were on the company and how, what you see the future with them or without them, or how you see that.
Yeah, my recommendation, anybody looking to compete with Microsoft, is don't. They are, and this is an interesting thing, because in Silicon Valley has this thing where about every 5 years people conclude that Microsoft's going to go out of business. And it happened in 94 and 95, and it was the conventional wisdom at the time, and it's happening again now. And, I just, again, you look back at history and it hasn't happened yet. So I am very, very happy to say LoudCloud is not competitive with Microsoft. LoudCloud's a very, very close partner with Microsoft, and we have many new friends up in Redmond who send us cards and letters and emails and little presents. They sent me a little compact handheld the other day. It was really cool. So.
There's just a lot of love in this.
There's a tremendous amount of love going on at this point.
Good. And thank you for sharing.
Yeah, and I'm happy to spend, the next hour talking about it.
Hi, the name is Nina. Everyone talks about these incremental technologies like wireless internet and broadband as if it's going to be this big new way of life. To me, the internet was a big new way of life. What do you think is the next big thing? Not necessarily limited to computers.
What's the next big radical shift? I have no idea, but I know that it's two kids in a garage somewhere. And I bet if you found out what they were doing, I bet you would think that they're absolutely crazy. And that's kind of the definition of almost what it has to be. Because if we knew what it was, we'd already be doing it.
Hi, Mark. My name's Steve Ford. I'm a first-year MBA at Stanford. My question is, given the recent downturn in tech stocks, how does what happened on Wall Street impact your approach to your business? And is there an occasional trade-off or differences in opinion in terms of how you feel you should approach your business versus what the investment community thinks?
Right. You'll love this answer. More time. You have more time now to do it right. You have more time to train managers. You have more time to spend on interviewing. You can reject more candidates. You can be much more selective and choosy. You have more time to build your culture. You have more time to communicate. You have more time to work on plans and think about what you're going to do. And that's been, I think, from a practical sort of street level view, that's been the most significant change. And I'll tell you, it's a very welcome one.
It sounds like Bob Dylan wrote this line in a song many years ago. She knows there's no success like failure, and that failure is no success at all. Maybe we finally figured out what it meant.
Yeah, there you go.
And on that philosophical note, Mark, thanks so much for joining us. I appreciate it. We've come to the end of this program. I want to thank Scott McNealy, Chairman and CEO of Sun Microsystems, for being with us, and I'd like to thank Marc Andreessen, Chairman of LoudCloud, for joining us. If this meeting of the minds has helped contribute to the world's marketplace of ideas, good, because that is the business of CEO Exchange. I'm Jeff Greenfield. Thank you so much. Bye.
What was your reaction? Anything stand out in particular?
I think the answer that stuck in my mind the most was what he said about making sure that you're not just watching and reading about what's happening in business. To really be a great manager, you've got to get out there and do things.
It always comes back to the Microsoft stuff, doesn't it? He always just keeps digging hard on that.
Especially to find somebody who comes out of a public university, out of University of Illinois, without a lot of venture capital backing, without Stanford or Harvard. This is somebody who makes things happen.
He's a mentor for a lot of us who want to kind of break out of the mold and see what we can do with ourselves beyond the traditional business school path.
And you have two people who are very much icons in the new economy, and I think there are a lot of people here at the business school